Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott. I am excited today to spend a little time talking about magic, and in particular, chaos magic. I have always found in studying ways to create my reality that some of the best sources of information are schools of magic because of their experimental nature. There are a bunch of schools of magic that you can find in literature that are truly fascinating. You can go to the classics like Aleister Crowley and Israel Regardie. Yes, I know many of these writers had some negative sides to them, but there is a whole history of magic, and it would do you good to read it all, because in it there is the experimentation with consciousness and understanding our way for our consciousness to affect our reality directly. As in my discussion with RJ Spina, a great interview, we discussed magic a little bit, and the purest form of magic comes from us. All magic is directly from us, and many of the magical systems where people use key phrases, chants, rituals, candles, any of those systems that have been used in the past, we're all trying to get to one thing. Within our imagination, we can create reality. Oftentimes what's happening with magic is we're tricking ourselves into believing that there's some force that we can use to create. But there are some schools of magic that really do utilize the same concepts that we do, that our thoughts create reality, but have created a structure that allow you to sort of experiment and try some different exercises to understand how you can create your reality. Chaos magic in particular sort of changes the paradigm of magic. Chaos magic rejects the existence of absolute truth and views all occult system and magic systems as arbitrary symbol systems that are only effective because of the belief of the practitioner. Chaos magic really focuses on the belief of the practitioner, and anything you believe can be turned into reality. They use belief as a key element in their system of reality creation. So let's discuss this further and see if we can learn a little bit more from the many wonderful authors on chaos magic. One book I recommend is Hands-on Chaos Magic, Reality Manipulation Through the Ovaiki Current. It's a great book, and it has some exercises. There's some other great chaos magic authors out there. In terms of magic in general, I recommend that you read Damien Eccles. His perspective and the place he's coming from is powerful, and he's very knowledgeable, and Damon Brand is another good author. But in particular with chaos magic, it's quite different. Much of what you find with chaos magic can be tied to an old author. Perhaps I will read one of his books. Austin Osman Spare is the first I could find, a book written in 1911 called The Book of Pleasure, which talks about how to create a sigil. The sigil system is very powerful, and that would be probably the original place where this sort of started. Common to various magic systems, traditions, or paradigms are certain key concepts. I urge the listener not to accept or reject these as theoretical constructs, but to try and verify them by personal experience. As with all my podcasts, but particularly with magic, you try to verify everything with personal experience. Everything that you do is magic. Every breath you take is magic. Every thought is magic. So get it out of your mind if you think that magic is evil or invites some sort of evil into your life. That's just conditioning that you got from your parents or your religion when you were younger. There's nothing wrong with magic, or there would be a problem with living. Living is magic. So let's look at what these systems say. For chaos magic, there are about some key concepts that they use. Number one, the whole is encoded within each of its constituents. As above, so below. You can find everything in the universe in the tiniest subatomic particle. Secondly, the whole is interconnected, and all relative wholes partake in consciousness to varying degrees. This is just a belief that everything is conscious, everything is connected. String theory Quantum theory is starting to show that this may be true. Third, the whole is self-organizing, and the evolution of all forms is governed by similar principles, meaning that all of consciousness, all of everything, is organizing by pattern, is self-organizing, and everything is evolving with similar laws and principles. Fourth, by means of a trained and directed will, we can affect change, probability being greater than possibility, at various levels of organization. Fifth, the key principle of chaos magic is that change is the only constant. You're in a universe that is constantly changing. 6, the whole is more than the sum of its parts, meaning the one that is everything is much more important than the parts of it. And 7th, our beliefs define the limits of our allowed experience. Our beliefs are the most important aspect. What we believe becomes true, as is reflected in the Bible by Christ himself. 8, everyday reality is not the limit of our experience. By entering altered states of consciousness, we can experience other realities. This is another powerful part of chaos magic, which makes it very enticing to learn more about, and that is, we don't have to accept that this reality that we wake up to every day is our limit. We can enter into other realms, dimensions of consciousness through altered states. And 9th, the entities which may be encountered during our experiences of these other realities are real within their own world. To question their relative existence is unimportant, since the universe behaves as if they do exist. And 10, magical ability is engendered through an inward transformative journey. The ability to have power and magic is a process that happens within, not without. It happens from the imagination. It happens from our thoughts. One concept that's discussed often is nosis, Gnosis. Gnosis is the key to magical abilities, the achievement of an intense state of consciousness, known in various traditions as no mind, one-pointedness, or Sartori, or as Joe Dispenza calls the void. Awareness is emptied of all information except the object-subject of concentration. Various methods of achieving gnosis can be resorted to, from frenzied dancing to the rapt contemplation of an idea. A lot of the magical techniques you see are trying to get you into this state of gnosis. Whatever method is chosen, the practitioner continues it until she or he is taken into ecstasy. Reaching gnosis, which is a part of the process of chaos magic, can result, for the religiously oriented, in mystical experiences, visitations by gods, demons, or the revealing of divine truths. For the magician, however, the contents of such an experience are less interesting than what can be done with it. The chaos magician takes a proactive approach. They may be in awe of the things they see, but they also want to see how they can take control of their own reality in the process. For the magician, the contents of such an experience are less interesting than what can be done with it. It is during moments of gnosis that sigils may be hurled, that the magician can reach out through layers of space-time to manifest her will, and gods can possess their devotees. Historically, many of the techniques of gnosis have been augmented by the use of drugs, from witches' flying ointments to LSD to DMT and ayahuasca, and sensory deprivation experiments of John Lilly. All of these have the power to create gnosis. Why do we want to enter into altered states so badly? Sometimes we've experienced gnosis before and we want to enter into it again. Any system or tradition is incomplete whilst it remains a theoretical curiosity. Study alone is of little value unless it is complemented by practical messing about. Whole volumes might be written explaining the magical natures of the various entities, such as goddesses, demons, angels, or spirits, but these are no substitute for the experienced reality of a deity during the course of a ritual. Although there is much talk of magical secrets, the only true secrets are those which can be personally discovered through the light of direct magical experience. Altered states of consciousness may be achieved using a combination of internal changes, the use of the methods of nosis, and interactions with others, as in hypnosis, group rituals, or even sex. Everything we know boils down to supposition in the end. So reverse all statements, or put knots into assertions, and leap before you look. Wake up one day and attempt to banish your everyday reality. Everything becomes new, unfamiliar, and totally baffling. Objects become intense and frightening. Be wrong. We spend a lot of time striving for right answers, right beliefs, doing it right. Confidence equals success. Boring. Be wrong. Possession by a god or a spirit or angel allows you to do things you would not ordinarily do. A guru gives you proof that you can walk a tightrope without falling off, that you can play in the deep end of the swimming pool without drowning. Insanity seems to be an occupational hazard of magicians. Better be mad now and save time later. Harpo Marx was the greatest Hollywood shaman. Could you blow up a rubber glove and then milk it? Sanity is out there rather than in your head, since most people seem to see themselves as crazier than everyone else. If we voice too many mad thoughts, we get locked up. You've always heard the story of the woman in the local asylum who thought she was a bird in a cage. She learned to keep quiet about it, as telling people only got her extra medications, so she stopped telling them that she felt like a bird in a cage, even though she did, and then she was released. Being safe is being sane, not expressing your mad thoughts. Magic can be about letting your mad thoughts out to stalk the streets in gangs. Magic is a street thing. Magicians must be seen and heard. A lot of times you'll see with different magicians a trickster persona exemplified. Remember, a magician that does magic is related to the magician that does shows of magic. They're always playing to an audience. Even a tribal shaman doing their magic or making talismans can also be playing to an audience. Learn to juggle and dance and play. Make people laugh. This is your true power, and this is where magic comes from. There's another cool concept from chaos magic called Titan nosis, Gnosis. There's a great deal of discussion on my channel, on other channels, that we're entering into the new earth. The change in the aeon, the influence of various energy currents and energy particles. Many people like myself believe an age of Aquarius is just around the corner. But then you could watch the world and you could begin to think that cannibal radioactive zombies are going to be taken over, right? If you watch TV enough, right? The 20th century is busy resurrecting the titans, the primal builders of the cosmos who appear in creation myths under various guises. The giants of Norse mythology, or the Greek titans, for instance. Once these titanic forces have completed their work, they are cast out or banished from the ordered cosmos, which is then populated with all manner of entities. The titans are ever present, lurking at the borders of the reality. These forces, both destructive and creative, continually appear in literature as the theme of conflict between reason and raw, primal nature. The high priest of such mysteries is the author H.P. Lovecraft, whose great old ones seem to be holding a continuing fascination for occultists, along with various other pantheons of dark gods, dead gods, deep-fried gods. The myth cycle of the Titans, including the Anunnaki, the Syrians, Ra, the Venetians. It represents the catabolic forces which propagate change in any system, whether the scale be universal or subatomic. They are held to be dormant or asleep in that they are in equilibrium. However, when a system evolves to a certain degree of complexity, it becomes increasingly unstable, which can eventually lead to either evolution, the system evolves to a higher order of complexity, or collapse, systems crash. It is at such crisis points that the Titans once more become active, when a great deal of instability needs to be built up so that the evolutionary leap may be made. The development of nuclear technology has led to a sudden increase of access points where the spheres meet between our ordered reality and the primal chaos of the Titans. The gateway has been opened, and the evolution of all entities within the biosphere, both organic and elemental, is being affected. Titan nosis is the name we have given the evolution in consciousness that the Titans are generating in human beings as their stirrings ripple through our mind. The Titans are the angels. The Titans are the protectors. Titans are the ascended masters. The awareness grows that human survival surpasses all boundaries, both ideological and cultural, that is necessary to live within nature rather than laying waste to the environment. It seems that as the Titans stir in death's dream, the closer we are to awakening in larger and larger numbers. The tricky point about the Titans is that for the moment, we need them if the evolutionary leap is to be made successfully. Their return has generated the incoming current, which has been variously conceptualized as the 93 Ma'at, or the chaos current, in the chaos magic literature. In the final analysis, the name and attendant symbolism are not that important. They are but facets of the same process. Magicians and other visionaries who are aware of Titan nosis and its effects are now actively working as transducers for these energies. Evocation of titanic energies into one's own space-time lattice is a dangerous enterprise, yet there are those who may seemingly do this with impunity. The use of names, sigils, and chants are only partially helpful, since the names of the Titans form the fabric of our reality itself. One concept that is regularly discussed in magic literature and in chaos magic is ego and will. The concept of the ego, the psychic structure of self-identifications, beliefs, desires, and personifications, is recognized as the basis of our psychocosm. A curious misconception has arisen that the ego is a barrier to magical development, that it is somehow to be taken down or destroyed before one can advance spiritually. To some, it seems that while Western development builds up the ego, Eastern approaches aim at ego transcendence. There is much discussion of the higher self, which appears after the ego has been transcended. The higher self is discussed in the Law of One material. It's very interesting that it's discussed also in magical works. This is a common theme in New Age thought. The psyche, however, is not a static entity, and this kind of ego versus higher self thinking is a carryover of the rationalistic mind-body division. Attempts to get rid of the ego can easily result in one-sided development, fostering both self-importance and a holier-than-thou attitude. Avoiding the so-called dark aspect of human desire results in a shallow caricature of human potentiality, a blandness which avoids plumbing the depths of the psyche. Clarity of thought, insight, and struggle are glossed over with a sugar-coating of bliss. To work with one's ego is to begin an inner alchemy, the aim of which is not to destroy or transcend it, but to move from a state of fixation, egocentric, to a condition of mutability, exocentric, which is capable of constant revision and change. This is what is meant by the phrase letting go, and of dissolving the idea of mind as separate to the world. The ego remains as a point of I-ness, which gives meaning to experience, yet the contents of the psyche become more fluid. In one sense, it is the ego which roots us in space-time, the psychic equivalent of having a sense of place, of occupying a particular set of coordinates. The majority of our experience of reality is at the level of objects, bodies, and events that appear to be temporarily separate. We experience ourselves as centers of will, perception, and ego. In contrast to the ego, the will displays a vector quality in that it has both direction and magnitude. The will is the wave to the ego's particle. Although we like to think of ourselves as centers of intentionality, much of our behavior is a result of vector resonance, which is waves rippling through appearing in our space-time universe as separate events and synchronous experiences. A key to the appropriate magical stance is given by Crowley in his novel Moonchild. The clever man, so-called the man of talent, shuts out his genius by setting up his conscious will as a positive entity. The true man of genius deliberately subordinates himself, reduces himself to a negative, and allows his genius to play through him as it will. The thelemic concept of the realization of the true will necessitates an unfolding of awareness of the will as a vector quality. Will imposes organization, order out of the chaos of the normal. Austin Osman Spare is the one that discusses this in his book, The Book of Pleasure. And the realization of true will involves an obedience of awareness of the evolutionary patterns which govern human development. Will is an emergent property of our interaction with the total environment. It cannot be isolated to any one element. Will, perception, and consciousness, we are immersed in them the way a fish is immersed in water. They are emergent properties of the total biosphere of Gaia. So much for the theory. How is this alchemy accomplished? The key word is integration, dissolving the mind-body-spirit-matter fragmentation. Enter into a being in the now dance, immersed in the body of Gaia within the universe. Will on any level is the organizing principle. Kundalini Shakti, coiled, creates all forms. Therefore, 1. Invoke, often feeling all magical acts as a passage of will through you. 2. Attend to the continual reconstruction of your psychocosm through the examination of beliefs, desires, and attitudes. 3. Seek union with all that you have rejected. 4. Practice magic as though your very survival depends on it. 5. Forget everything you have been told about the world, assume nothing, and develop your own path. And then 6. Eat more donuts. Sigils is probably the key thing about chaos magic. If someone wanted to explain chaos magic to you in person, they would probably just talk about sigils. As far as I can tell, sigils come from originally the author Austin Osman Spare. They're very powerful, and I can only report from personal experience that it's very effective. It's a way of encapsulating your thought into a symbol. Sigilization is a method by which a desire/intent is encoded into a non-obvious form, i.e. a glyph or a picture, which does not immediately call to mind the original intent. Many of you follow me on Facebook or on Instagram, and I am constantly painting with my wife. We love art, but we are always creating sigils. Every one of our pieces of art is a sigil. We believe they are all magic, and we imbue them with certain ideas. Every single painting that we have is not just a piece of art, it's a sigil. Each one has magical intent, and if you hang this magic all around you, it's very powerful. Any magical intent can be written out, and the letters scrambled to form a picture, a mantra, or neologism, which can be repeated or concentrated upon until nosis ensues. Sigils can create the nosis or trance effect where you know you're in the spot where you can create your magic. Alternatively, the sigil may be set aside until its original purpose is forgotten and then hurled. During nosis or times of great emotional feeling, the sigil may be drawn, visualized, or fiercely concentrated upon to the exclusion of all else. This enables the so-called subconscious mind to reprogram reality in accordance with will. Once the sigil is cast, it is forgotten, so that the desire's realization is not hindered by lust of result. The word spoken or written forms the majority of sigils. It is also worth experimenting with the keying of desires to specific smells, tastes, or sounds. A sound can be a sigil. A taste can be a sigil. Sigils can bring about a wide range of results, from the most abstract to the mundane. Most of the time, the sigil is a visual representation, a symbol that you've never seen before, a scratching or combination of different lines and circles. Everyone is different, and if you don't recognize it, it is possible that it is a sigil. Sigils may be formed in this manner independently of any system of planetary or other symbols. and can be hurled forth without elaborate ritual. As a method of practical magic, it is simple and elegant. Its effectiveness can be discovered through personal experiment. Most of the systems for creating sigils require putting yourself into a state of bliss or happiness. It can happen during a sexual event, or you could be dancing something uplifting or powerful, and then in that powerful emotional moment, creating the sigil or staring at it and imbuing it with power from these heightened feeling emotional states. You can find more about this from the Book of Results by Ray Sherwin and Liber Null by Pete Carroll. Deliberate magical duels between sorcerers are generally regarded as black magic by Westerners, yet magical combat can be an extremely powerful way of bringing a trainee magician to full operancy. Such tests of fitness can be found in the trials of Zen pupils under various masters, the shamanistic explorations of Carlos Castaneda or Lynn Andrews in the legend of Nimue and Merlin. As part of an initiation, a candidate may be expected to defend a spot or object despite all the combined efforts of the group to flaunt her. A long-range magical attack may employ telepathic destructive impulses, projection of thought forms, or sympathetic or unsympathetic magic. Magical combat should be differentiated from psychic attack, with which a large proportion of fringe occultists concern themselves with, and is largely a product of self-delusion and varying degrees of megalomania. True magical combat has its own rules and boundaries, which are known to the skilled, while the trainee must quickly learn them if trauma is to be avoided. Caught up in a situation which he or she finds incomprehensible and alien, the trainee only knows confusion and terror. Stripped of the smug self-assurance of "it can't happen to me," she or he learns to perceive the environment with clarity, to give attention to the rhythms and pulses of the world. Truly, death is a great teacher. If you can reach forwards and see the moment of your death, then that moment will give you a glimpse of your potential. My favorite part of Doctor Strange Multiverse in Madness is the magic battle they have with music, using sounds as weapons. But hey, I admit, it's always fun to watch magic battles in movies, but the process of thinking about it might be helpful in protecting yourself. The process of Western magicians does not seem as terrible as the travails of magicians in other cultures. Since so much knowledge can be brought, the idea of striving against trials for power seems foreign. This is not just a glamour. Life-threatening or mentally traumatic situations can open the floodgates of magical ability in a way that no weekend workshop or correspondence course ever can. Living on the edge is an appropriate phrase, as there is no room for half measures. A magical combat, if properly arranged, will force you to relearn what you need to be able to do in order to survive. If a magus is going to pass her power to another, she must be sure that the candidate has the qualities, i.e. a survival instinct and staying power necessary to accept the responsibility and karma that attends the position. The aim of such combat is constructive, but if the candidate fails, so must it be. This is what happens in chaos magic schools and in books, is they teach that magical combat can be instructive. One aspect of magic is ritual. Some of the oldest forms of magic require certain rituals. During ritual, the network of concepts, symbols, and mental maps come alive, and the direct experience produces a change in consciousness. Ritual involves sidestepping the everyday world and creating a bubble where all limitations are suspended, and the power of magic flows unhindered. A well-tuned group can act as a silicon chip within the biosphere, accessing and interfacing with other subsystems via the code of symbols, nosis, and imagination, allowing change to manifest at all levels possible in the system. Aeonic developments, seasonal rhythms, psychic development, as here so everywhere. Ritual creates order out of chaos, a sphere wherein everything, even our mistakes, is an expression of will. When invoking the chaos current, one is identifying with the unfolding aeonic shift, so that one literally becomes the current, as a physical locus. Armed with this awareness, a seasonal rite can become a powerful focus of change, as the seasonal pulses are directed both inwardly, personal change, and outwardly, environmental change. Traditionally, these festivals are crossover points between the worlds, An awareness of the internal-external dimensions seems to have been largely forgotten by Westerners, shielded as we are from the elements by our centrally heated boxes. The scale at which a ritual act manifests is dependent on the will of its participants. Anything from scrying the ripples and eddies of chaos to warping the very fabric of space-time. The format of the working is that which the participants perceive to be appropriate to the intent. Invocation may be verbal or structured from an arrangement of bells and gongs of different tone. A sequence of dances may be arranged to reflect the transformation of force into form, or the energization of astral machines or circuits. A ritual begun physically may be reenacted or continued in dream. Chaos magicians have found that generally it is simply structured rituals which have the most effective result. Will is the feather touch which can move mountains. As with anything else, someone else's ritual will only be effective for you up to a point. Looking at other people's rites as learning devices, ritual for its own sake is rarely effective, but when powered by will, intent is highly so. However, the conditions of mind that must be mastered is to stop thinking about whether or not the rite will be effective. Lust of result must be replaced by a cellular certainty that once the arrow of desire has been loosed, it will strike its target. By all means, discuss experiences, technique, and how it can be done better next time, but the intention, desire vanish from conscious concern. Another fascinating concept discussed in chaos magic is magical weapons. In general, a magical weapon is a focus for will and perception, a vehicle for astral etheric energy, whatever that is. Physical form is a secondary consideration. A weapon is any instrument which is imbued with power. Some shamanic instruments, dolls, masks, rattles, drums, have their own history, personality, and charisma. They are quite likely to bite the unwary and are considered by their owners to be sentient. The relationship between such a weapon and its owner is similar to that of a human and a cat. A true weapon of power owns itself and is quite likely to decide when it should be passed on. Perhaps the foremost weapon is the body. In magical combat, projection of the bio-aura can disrupt the field of another person, the push resulting in psychophysical trauma. Eastern yogis are reputed to be able to cause death by application of mantra yoga. The way we experience our bodies tends to reflect our world experience. See the body as a machine and it is liable to break down. Chaos magicians prefer to view the body as a biosystem, a microcosm of the biosphere, itself a microcosm of the universe. Thus the body becomes a weapon for understanding the greater systems which it is enmeshed. I'm not saying that you create magic weapons to use against anybody. Magic should only be done in service of others. I'm only advocating white magic, but integrating the system of chaos magic into its discussion. So, if it's a weapon against negative energy. It's a weapon against anything that would infringe on the cleanliness and power of your space. That is all. Very much like Moses was given his magical staff to use as a weapon of God. One subsystem that is discussed in chaos magic literature is neuromantics. Neuromancy centers on occult ability and potentia within the human brain, possibly the least understood and most complex system of all. All occult exercises according to this model have some kind of effect on the brain, and it also follows that in respect to experiences with possession or nosis, that the root event is occurring at a neurological level. Thus, the aim of any psychotechnology is to unlock the powers of the human brain. Chaos magicians believe that the evolutionary adaptation of humanity is an ongoing development of consciousness, and the place where all vectors meet in consciousness is expressed, in physical form, as the individual biosystem. Of all the techniques of neuromancy, recourse to chemonosis, or drugs, is the most widespread across cultures, and in the Western Hemisphere particularly, one that arouses much controversy. Only those who have received medical training and can hence say from a position of authority that they do not know how the brain works are allowed to tamper with it. Through ECT, surgery, and the good old chemical kosh, while it is fine for these watchdogs to impose their will upon the brains of others, it is quite another matter for non-qualified people to try it themselves. Another interesting subject in chaos magic is techno-shamanism. We live in a technological world that's constantly changing, So where can we find magic in this technological world? One thing that a lot of people in chaos magic, especially on Reddit, are into is using white noise. An untuned television set has white noise energy that you can take in for yourself. You can recover other people's discards and use them to produce magical objects. They will go to auctions, sales, thrift shops, and find old items and sense the energies from them and use them to produce magical objects. Talismans made from photo montages and collages. And a sort of internet magic is starting to take form where people are using images on the screen as magical power, just like the sigils. And for many, it's very powerful and works. The interesting thing about chaos magic is that many will say, don't go read books on chaos magic. Write your own. All you need to do is just start writing down your magical system, and then it becomes the chaos magic. You are creating your magic. You are experimenting and doing it yourself. That is what you're doing. That is true chaos magic, writing your own book on it. This is just a quick summary of some of the stuff that I read about, and there is so much more that you can find out. I just recommend to keep an open mind, looking at all sources of information, because oftentimes you will find it when you look in unusual places. The idea is every one of our thoughts that we use to create come from a feeling, a story that we tell ourselves. It can be complicated. It can be a whole set of things that you want to create. You can consolidate those with light into a single symbol, and whenever you look at that symbol, it evokes all of the idea of that. Very much like an affirmation, but in visual symbolic form. And you can imbue it with energy and increase its power whenever you see it, and it becomes special in the way that it creates the reality. So the sigil itself is effective. Some of these other techniques and discussions are also interesting, as I find with all magic. I am not a specific school of magic. All of them interest me, and the only thing I really don't get into much is the evocation of certain spirits in closed circles, that kind of thing, because I just don't get into it. It's not as interesting. I'm more interested in attempts to affect my consciousness, and those are the things that I find most interesting. I'd love to know if you've tried some magic, and if there's some that's worked for you, please put it in the comments. You can find all episodes of The Reality Revolution at therealityrevolution.com. And welcome to The Reality Revolution.